At Christmas, my daughter gave me a pair of cheap slippers as a gift. And for her mother-in-law, a brand new car. My name is Patricia, and I'm 68 years old. I never thought the day would come when I'd sit down to tell this story. But here I am, with my hands still trembling a little when I think about what happened that Christmas of 2024. Maybe you think I'm just another old lady complaining about life, but I hope that by the end of this story, you'll understand that sometimes we need to make difficult decisions to recover our dignity. It was Christmas Eve when I received my daughter Jennifer's gift. She arrived at my house in Coral Gables with that smile I knew so well, the same one she used as a child when she wanted something special. At 42 years old, Jennifer could still look like a little girl when it suited her. "Mom, this is for you," she said, handing me a package wrapped in cheap golden paper. My heart beat faster. For years, I had been waiting for some gesture that showed she cared, that recognized everything I had done for her. I opened it carefully, trying not to show my anxiety. Inside the box was a pair of pink slippers with plastic flowers. I discreetly turned the tag, $15 from the neighborhood pharmacy. I felt something cold forming in my chest, but I forced a smile. "Thank you, my dear," I murmured, holding the slippers as if they were a treasure. Jennifer was already distracted, fiddling with her phone. "You're welcome, Mom. Oh, James is coming. We need to go to his mother's house." James, my son-in-law, arrived honking. A 45-year-old man who never had to work very hard because he always knew he could count on me to help with the couple's expenses. Jennifer gave me a hurried kiss on the forehead and ran out. I stood on the porch watching them leave in the silver BMW that I had helped finance 2 years before. The sound of the engine disappearing in the distance left me with a feeling of emptiness that I knew well, but which this Christmas seemed heavier than ever. 2 hours later, I was scrolling through social media when I saw the photos. Jennifer had posted on Instagram an image of her handing the keys to a brand new red Tesla to Ruth, her mother-in-law. The caption read, "Special gift for the most incredible mother-in-law in the world. $65,000 well invested in someone who deserves the best." I reread the sentence 3 times. $65,000. I was holding $15 slippers. I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. The photos continued, Ruth crying with joy, Jennifer and James smiling proudly, the car shining under the Christmas lights. In the comments, dozens of people congratulated my daughter for her incredible generosity and love for family. I walked to my room like a robot and sat on the bed I'd had for 15 years. The same bed where I economized to avoid replacing it because I preferred to spend money on Jennifer's dreams. There, alone, I let the tears fall for the first time in years. It wasn't about the money. It was about what those gifts represented. Ruth got a car because she was important family. I got slippers because I was... what? The mother who would always be there, who never complained, who always found a way to solve everything. That Christmas night, while I heated a frozen pizza for dinner, Jennifer had canceled our tradition of family dinner to go to her in-laws' house. Something broke inside me. Or maybe something finally got fixed. It was 3 in the morning when I gave up trying to sleep. I went to the office and turned on the light, determined to do something I had avoided for years. Review exactly how much I had invested in Jennifer's life over the years. I started with bank statements from the last 5 years, but soon realized I needed to go further. Much further. I opened the drawer where I kept old documents and began to put together the true story of our last 35 years. Jennifer was 7 years old when her father abandoned us. Gary left home on an ordinary Thursday, said he had found someone younger and didn't want any more family responsibilities. He never sent a cent in child support, despite court orders. He disappeared as if he had never existed. Suddenly, I was a single mother of 33, with a scared little girl who asked every night when Daddy was coming back. I worked as a secretary at a veterinary clinic in the morning and cleaned offices at night. Jennifer stayed with the neighbor, Mrs. Carmen, who charged me $50 a week, money I often didn't have. I remember counting coins at the supermarket, calculating if I could buy milk and eggs in the same week. Jennifer didn't know, but there were nights when I only had toast for dinner so she could eat a full meal. When she was 12 and wanted piano lessons, I sold my grandmother's wedding ring. When she needed braces at 15, I took out a loan at the bank using my car as collateral. High school graduation, special dress, party, everything financed with the credit card that took me 2 years to pay off. College was the biggest challenge. Jennifer wanted to study marketing at the University of Miami, one of the most expensive in the region. "Mom, it's my dream. You can't deny me this," she cried when I suggested a cheaper university. I worked 3 jobs during her 4 years of college. Secretary cleaning, and I also started doing housekeeping on weekends. My social life disappeared completely. Friends stopped inviting me out because I always said I couldn't spend money or was busy working. I borrowed $28,000 for college. Jennifer graduated without owing anything to anyone, while I was still paying the loan 3 years later. At 26, she announced her engagement to James. She dreamed of a fairy tale wedding at a resort in Key Largo. The budget? $52,000. Mom, it's the most important day of my life. You always said you'd do anything for me. I refinanced the house. I took out a personal loan. I used all my emergency savings. The wedding was beautiful. All 300 guests praised the party. The photos were perfect for Instagram. Jennifer was radiant. I was broke and exhausted, but happy to see her fulfilled. Then came the small requests. Help with the apartment down payment, furniture for the new house, the car when James lost his job for 6 months. There was always an emergency, always a reason why they needed my help, just this once. I finished adding everything up when the sun was rising. For 35 years, I had invested $183,400 in Jennifer's life, not counting the extra work hours, the lost nights of sleep, the relationships I could never build because I was always busy being the perfect mother. And at Christmas 2024, she gave me $15 slippers. I sat there looking at those numbers and finally understood something important. I had created a monster, not out of malice, but out of excessive love. Jennifer never learned the value of things because I always made sure she never needed anything. It was time for her to learn. I took a shower, dressed in my best clothes, and waited for the bank to open. I had important decisions to make, and for the first time in decades, those decisions would be about me. During that endless dawn, while reviewing documents and bank statements, something beyond the numbers began to become clear to me. It wasn't just about the money I had spent. It was about the dreams I had abandoned along the way. I found my old student ID from Florida International University. Yes, I also had academic dreams once. I wanted to be a landscape designer, work with gardens and environmental projects. I had even started the course in 1989, but when Gary left me, I had to drop out in the second semester. I never went back. I also found old photos of me painting watercolors. It was my favorite hobby before Jennifer was born. I used to spend hours painting the landscapes of Miami Beach at sunset. The canvases were still stored in the attic, dusty, forgotten for decades. And what about relationships? I found a Valentine's Day card from 2018 from Mr. Martinez. No, we weren't related, just a coincidence of surnames. He was a widower, kind, took me dancing foro at the Cuban Community Center. Jennifer didn't like him. Mom, do you really need to go out with that boring old man? What if you marry him and he wants to keep your house? I ended the relationship 2 weeks later. As always, I put Jennifer's insecurities above my happiness. The list of sacrifices seemed infinite. How many times did I say, I can't, I need to help Jennifer when friends invited me on trips? How many extension courses did I skip because the money went to Jennifer's projects? I especially remember 2019 when Jennifer and James wanted to change apartments. They wanted something more modern in Brickell. I was excited because I had enrolled in a landscaping course at Miami-Dade College, finally resuming my old dream. Mom, we need $20,000 for the down payment on the new apartment. It's a unique opportunity. Jennifer came home crying dramatically. I canceled the course and lent the money. I never enrolled in anything again. While calculating the emotional costs of those years, I realized something terrible. I had become a person without my own identity. Patricia existed only as Jennifer's mother. I had no hobbies, no independent social circle, no dreams of my own. And Jennifer? She had become a 42-year-old woman who had never faced real difficulty in life. When the car broke down, she called me. When money ran short at the end of the month, I was there. When she needed emotional validation or someone to listen to her complaints about James, guess who got the call at 11 at night? I had created an emotional and financial dependent. And worse, I had become dependent on her need for me. I felt useful when she needed help, important when I was the only person who could solve her problems. It was a sick cycle. And the $15 slippers were just the symbol of how toxic this dynamic had become. When I finished my calculations, the sun was already high. I had strong coffee, got ready, and left the house with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I had a clear mission: get my life back. The Chase Bank, where I had maintained my accounts for 23 years, opened at 9 in the morning. I was waiting at the door since 8:40, with a folder full of documents and a handwritten list of the changes I intended to make. Good morning, Mrs. Patricia. How can I help you today? Asked Jennifer, the manager who had known me since Jennifer was a teenager. I need to make some important changes to my accounts, I replied, placing the folder on her desk. The first step was to cancel the automatic transfers. Every month, $500 automatically left my checking account for the joint account that Jennifer and I had maintained since 2015. She used this money for emergencies, which included everything from manicures to dinner at expensive restaurants. Are you sure, Mrs. Patricia? This transfer has existed for years, Jennifer seemed worried. Absolutely sure. Cancel it today. Next, I removed Jennifer as a beneficiary of my savings account, certificate of deposit, and my small investment account. If something happened to me, the money would go to charities, not to finance more whims. The hardest part was canceling the 2 additional credit cards that Jennifer had in her name, but which were paid by my account. One had a limit of $3,000, the other $5,000. Both were close to the maximum limit. Those cards generate considerable monthly debt, observed Jennifer, looking at the statement. You pay about $800 a month just for those additional card bills. $800 monthly that I didn't even know exactly how they were spent. Jennifer never gave a count. Just used, and I paid. Like a fool. Cancel both, immediately. Jennifer typed some information. Done. The cards will be disabled within 2 hours. The last change was the most symbolic. I closed the joint account I maintained with Jennifer since she got married. In that account, I deposited money for family emergencies. Jennifer withdrew freely without ever consulting me. Would you like to transfer the balance to your personal account? Asked Jennifer. I looked at the statement. $2,300. Money I had intended for Jennifer's needs, but which would now be mine again. Yes. Transfer everything to my savings. When I left the bank, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Financial freedom. For the first time in years, every cent in my account was truly mine. I went straight home and called the insurance company. I removed Jennifer as a beneficiary of my life insurance policy. Then I called my accountant and scheduled an appointment for the following week. I wanted to review my will. Jennifer called at 2:15 in the afternoon. Mom, my card was declined at the supermarket. How embarrassing. What happened? Her voice had that tone of indignation she used when things didn't go as expected, as if I had an obligation to keep her life running perfectly. I canceled the additional cards, dear. Silence on the other end of the line. Canceled? Why? I need to shop for New Year's. James invited friends for dinner at home. Jennifer, you're 42 years old. You've been married for 16 years. I think it's time for you to take on your own expenses. Mom, have you gone crazy? You can't do this to me. I need that money. Need or want. Another pause. I could imagine Jennifer on the other side, trying to process that her mother, for the first time in her life, had said no. I'm coming over now. We need to talk. No, Jennifer. We're not going to talk about this. My decision is made. I hung up before she could respond. 15 minutes later, she was banging on my door like crazy. When I opened it, her eyes were red with anger and desperation. Mom, you can't do this to me. We're family. You've always helped me. And I'll continue helping when it's really necessary. But $65,000 for a car for your mother-in-law while giving me $15 slippers isn't necessity, Jennifer. It's disrespect. She went white. She finally understood what had been the trigger. Was it because of the gift? Mom, I didn't have much money at the time. You had $65,000 for Ruth. But that was different. It was different because I'm your mother and you think you can treat me like garbage? Jennifer started crying. Not the manipulative tears I knew well, but real panic crying. For the first time in her life, she was facing real consequences for her actions. Please, Mom, don't do this. I need you. Do you need me, or do you need my money? She couldn't answer. That afternoon, for the first time in decades, I closed the door on my adult daughter and didn't feel guilty. I felt relief. Jennifer didn't give up easily. In the 5 days that followed, she developed a psychological warfare strategy that impressed me with its creativity and saddened me with its manipulation. It started with the calls. 28 calls on the first day after our conversation. I counted because I was curious to see how far she would go. I only answered 3. In the first, she tried the victim tone. Mom, I can't sleep. I'm getting sick from crying so much. You're the only family I have. In the second, she went for emotional blackmail. Remember when I was 8 and you promised you'd always take care of me? You're breaking your promise. In the third and last one I answered, she tried intimidation. James is furious. He said if you don't back down, we'll have to review our entire relationship. I hung up and put the phone on silent. When the calls didn't work, she showed up at my door on New Year's Eve with a different strategy. Weaponized nostalgia. I brought some old photos for us to look at together, she said. forcing a smile while holding a shoebox full of photographs. I let her in, curious to see what was coming. For an hour, she showed childhood photos. Jennifer in my lap at 2 years old, the two of us at the beach when she was 10, high school graduation, the wedding. With each photo, a calculated comment. Look how happy we were, Mom. It's just us two against the world, remember? You were the best mother a daughter could have. Why are you throwing it all away now? Dad abandoned us, but you always said we would never abandon each other. It was an impressive performance. If I hadn't spent that week reflecting on our dynamic, it might have worked. But now I could see the manipulation behind every word. Jennifer? I interrupted in the middle of a story about how I used to make special pancakes for her on Sundays. Do you realize you haven't mentioned once how I felt when I got $15 slippers after investing $180,000 in your life? She blinked, clearly uncomfortable with the change of focus. Mom, I already apologized for the gift. When? You apologized when? Because I don't remember. Silence. Jennifer, do you know how much I spent on your education? I don't. We never calculated. $28,000 just for college. $52,000 on your wedding? $15,000 on your car? Do you know how much you spent on your mother-in-law this Christmas? $65,000, but... And on me? She looked down. $15. And you think the problem is me throwing everything away? Or you never learning to value me? Jennifer started crying again. But this time I didn't feel like comforting her. I felt sorry for her. Sorry that she had reached 42 without ever developing real empathy. She left my house that night without being able to convince me of anything. The next strategy was to involve the extended family. I should have predicted this. Knowing Jennifer. First, she called my sister Rosa, who lives in Orlando. Patricia has gone crazy, she must have said, because Rosa called me on January the 2nd, very worried. Patricia, dear, Jennifer told me you two fought. She's desperate. She said you cut off all her financial help at once. Don't you think that was too radical? Rosa always had an easier life than mine. She married a man who never abandoned her, had 2 children who became independent adults. For her, my problems with Jennifer were just a family misunderstanding. Rosa, do you know that Jennifer earns $15,000 a month at her job? I know. But Miami is expensive, Patricia. She spent $65,000 on a car for her mother-in-law and gave me $15 slippers. Do you think that's normal? Rosa was quiet for a moment. Well, when you put it like that, that's exactly how it is, Rosa. It's not a silly fight. It's an adult daughter who never learned to respect me. Then it was my cousin Carmen's turn, who received a tearful call from Jennifer. Carmen called me trying to mediate. Patricia, family is family. Jennifer made a mistake, but you can solve this by talking. Carmen, would you lend money to your daughter to buy a luxury car for her mother-in-law? Well, no, but then don't give me advice on how to deal with mine. The most pathetic attempt was when Jennifer called my former boss, Mrs. Mercedes, who was 83 years old and didn't know anything about our situation. Patricia, dear, your daughter called me worried about you. She said you're going through a difficult phase and rejecting family. Could it be late menopause? Late menopause. At 68 years old. Jennifer had convinced an elderly lady that I was having hormonal outbursts. Mrs. Mercedes, with all due respect, Jennifer is lying to you. I'm not rejecting family. I'm rejecting being treated like a financial doormat. The low point came when Jennifer used my grandson, Justin, who is 16 years old. Justin showed up at my house on a Thursday afternoon, clearly embarrassed. Grandma, can I talk to you? Of course. Honey, want a sandwich? We sat in the kitchen and I noticed he was nervous, fidgeting with his hands and avoiding my gaze. Grandma, Mom is very sad. She cries all the time and says you don't love her anymore. My heart tightened. Not for Jennifer, but for Justin, who was being used as a messenger in an adult conflict. Justin, do you know why your mother and I are going through this? She said you fought over money. Did your mother tell you she gave me $15 slippers for Christmas? Justin seemed confused. She said you fought because she couldn't afford to buy you an expensive gift this year. Jennifer had lied even to her own son. Justin, I said, choosing my words carefully, your mother gave me $15 slippers and on the same day spent $65,000 on a car for your grandmother Ruth. Do you think that's right? His eyes widened. At 16, he already had enough sense of justice to understand the disparity. $65,000 on Grandma Ruth's Tesla? Yes. And for you, $15? Yes. Justin was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. Grandma, Mom asked me to talk to you about forgiving her and going back to helping our family financially. And what do you think? He looked at me with a maturity that surprised me. I think Mom treated you badly, and I think it's wrong for her to use me to try to convince you. I smiled at my grandson. At least one person in this family had developed good sense. Justin, I didn't stop loving your mother, but I stopped accepting being disrespected by her. Do you understand the difference? I understand, Grandma. When he left, I knew Jennifer would try other tactics. But I also knew that each manipulation attempt only confirmed that I had made the right decision. Some people don't change until they're forced to change. Jennifer was about to learn this lesson the hard way. The conversation with Justin made me realize something disturbing. Jennifer was willing to use even her own son to manipulate me. This showed me that she saw our situation not as an opportunity for reflection and growth, but as a war she needed to win at any cost. 2 days after Justin's visit, Jennifer showed up at my door with a completely different strategy. She was accompanied by James, who rarely got involved in our family affairs. "Patricia," said James, using a formal tone he had never used with me before, "we need to have an adult conversation about this situation." James had always been a man who preferred the easy path. During the 16 years of marriage to Jennifer, he got used to letting me solve the couple's financial problems. It was more convenient to accept my help than to face real-life difficulties. "Jennifer told me her version of the facts," he continued, "but I believe there's a misunderstanding here. We're a family, Patricia." "Family doesn't abandon family." I looked at him with genuine curiosity. "James, did you know Jennifer spent $65,000 on your mother's car?" "Of course I knew. It was my idea, actually. My mother deserved a special gift. And you thought it was fair for her to give me $15 slippers." James seemed uncomfortable for the first time. "Well, finances were tight after buying the car. James, together you earn more than $20,000 a month. Jennifer earns $15,000 as a marketing manager. You earn $8,000 as a financial analyst. How can finances be tight?" He exchanged a look with Jennifer, who seemed mortified that I knew the details of their financial life. "Patricia, what matters is that we've been family for decades. You've always supported us, and we've always respected you." "Respected?" I interrupted. "James, when was the last time you invited me for dinner at your house without asking to borrow money?" Silence. "When was the last time you remembered my birthday without me having to remind you?" More silence. "When was the last time you asked how I am, if I need anything?" James looked at Jennifer, clearly lost. Jennifer, in turn, started crying again. "See? You can't even answer. For years, I existed only as a source of resources. Now that I've turned off the tap, you've discovered you need to treat me like a person." James tried one last card. "Patricia, if you don't back down from this decision, maybe it's better if we keep our distance for a while. Jennifer is very hurt, and your presence only makes things worse." It was a threat disguised as concern. They were blackmailing me with the possibility of cutting me off from family life. "I understand," I replied calmly. "You're telling me you only want my company if it comes with my money. It's not that—" James started to stumble. "James, it's exactly that, James. And you know what? I accept the proposal. Keep your distance. Maybe then you'll learn to solve your own problems." Jennifer sobbed louder. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious. Get out of my house." They left, and James slammed the door hard. A 45-year-old man throwing a tantrum. That night, something crystallized in my mind. I had spent decades creating infantile adults. Jennifer had never faced real consequences because I always appeared to solve everything. James got used to having a mother-in-law bank because it was convenient. But what disturbed me most was realizing that Justin was observing this pattern. At 16, he was already learning that family women exist to solve other people's problems, that it was normal to use emotional blackmail to get what you want. If I didn't cut this cycle now, Justin would grow up thinking it was normal to treat women like emotional and financial doormats. This realization gave me even more strength to maintain my decision. It was during a walk in Bayfront Park, 3 weeks after Christmas, that I met Carmen. Carmen had been my best friend until Jennifer turned 15. When I started canceling our meetings to work weekends, or to solve some crisis of my daughter's. "Patricia, my God, it's been so long." Carmen hugged me with the genuine affection I had forgotten existed. We sat on a bench facing the bay, and she told me about recent years. She had divorced at 55, gone back to school, graduated in nursing, and now worked at Jackson Memorial Hospital. At 65, Carmen had a full life, friends, hobbies, even a boyfriend. "And you, Patricia? How's life? And Jennifer?" The simple question opened a floodgate. I told everything. Christmas, the slippers, the Tesla, the manipulation attempts, my decision to cut financial support. Carmen listened in silence, shaking her head from time to time. Patricia, she said finally, do you remember why we stopped seeing each other? I remember. I was always busy with Jennifer. Do you remember the last time I tried to invite you out? I thought for a moment. No, it was a long time ago. It was in 2019. My daughter Patricia was getting married. I invited you to be my companion at the wedding because you're my oldest friend. Do you know what you answered? I didn't remember, but from Carmen's tone, it hadn't been a good answer. You said, I can't, Carmen. Jennifer is going through a difficult phase in her marriage and needs me every weekend to talk. Patricia, your daughter was 38 years old. The memory came back like a punch. Jennifer was fighting with James because he wanted her to go back to work after 2 years of finding herself. I spent entire Saturdays listening to her complain and asking me for advice on how to deal with an insensitive husband. Carmen, Patricia, you lost decades of your life being mother to an adult. And you know what's the saddest part? Jennifer never thanked you for it. On the contrary, she treated you like a paid employee to solve her life. But she's my daughter, and I have children too. Patricia and Roberto. Do you know the difference? When they turned 18, I made it clear they would be independent adults. Of course I help when there are real emergencies, but I don't support their lifestyle or solve problems they can solve themselves. Carmen told me how she raised independent children. Patricia graduated in engineering, works at a solar energy company, and has her own house. Roberto is a history teacher and father of 2 children. Both have healthy relationships with their mother, but don't depend on her to function as adults. Patricia, do your children call you to chat or only when they need something? The question hit me like an arrow. I tried to remember the last time Jennifer called me just to see how I was, to tell a joke, to share something good that had happened to her. I couldn't remember any time. Jennifer only calls me when she has problems, I admitted. And do you have friends besides me? No. I lost touch with everyone over the years. Hobbies? No. Romantic relationships? I ended things with Mr. Martinez because Jennifer didn't like him. Carmen took my hands. Patricia, you didn't just lose money with Jennifer. You lost your identity, your relationships, your dreams. At 68, you don't know who you are besides Jennifer's mother. I started crying there on the bench. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition. Carmen was right about everything. It's never too late to start over, she said. I divorced at 55 and built a new life. You can do the same at 68. But Jennifer is a 42-year-old adult. If she can't live without financial help from her mother at that age, the problem is hers, not yours. We spent 2 hours talking on that bench. Carmen told me about her salsa classes, her book club, the trips she took with the neighborhood senior citizens club. Patricia, when was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, without thinking if Jennifer would approve? I couldn't answer. When we said goodbye, Carmen gave me her updated number. Call me when you want to resume our friendship for real, but only when you're ready to be Patricia, not just Jennifer's mother. I walked home with a strange feeling. For the first time in decades, I was curious about who Patricia could become if she stopped existing only in function of another person. The conversation with Carmen was the push I needed to start rebuilding my identity. For the first time in decades, I began asking myself, what does Patricia want to do today? Instead of, what does Jennifer need from me today? The first thing I did was call Miami-Dade College and ask about landscaping courses. The girl who answered was very kind when I explained that I was 68 years old and wanted to resume an old dream. We have a special program for non-traditional students, she said. Classes start in March and you can still enroll. March, 2 months away. For the first time in years, I had something to look forward to that didn't involve solving other people's problems. I also signed up for watercolor classes at the Coral Gables Community Center. Every Thursday, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, the teacher, Mr. Giuseppe, was 80 years old and had the energy of a 20-year-old. Art has no age, he said when I mentioned I was rusty. It only has passion. I found my old canvases in the attic. 23 watercolors I had painted between 1985 and 1992, before life completely swallowed me. Some were damaged by humidity, but most were still perfect. Looking at those works, I remembered who I was before becoming just Jennifer's mother. I was an artist, someone who saw beauty in the colors of sunset over Biscayne Bay, someone who could capture morning light on palm leaves. I hung 2 watercolors in the living room, one of the Cape Florida Lighthouse and another of the Coconut Grove Marina. For the first time in years, my house reflected my personality, not just functionality. Carmen invited me to the Thursday walking group at Crandon Park. I met Maria, a 62-year-old widow who had gone back to study psychology at 55. I also met Esperanza, divorced at 60, who opened a small plant store and was fulfilling her dream of working with gardening. Our lives don't end at 60, said Maria during one of our walks. Actually, for many of us, it's when they finally begin. I started learning Italian online. I always wanted to visit Tuscany, but there was never money for trips because I was always financing Jennifer's dreams. Now, with the $500 monthly I stopped transferring to her, plus the $800 I saved by canceling the additional cards, I had $1,300 extra dollars per month. For the first time in my adult life, I had money for my own dreams. I bought a ticket to Rome for October, 7 months in advance to plan, study Italian, and prepare for the adventure I always wanted to live. During these months of rediscovery, Jennifer kept her distance, as James had promised. Occasionally, I received text messages trying to reestablish contact. Mom, I miss you. I'm thinking about you. Can we talk? I always responded the same way. When you're ready for an adult-to-adult relationship based on mutual respect, I'll be here. Her responses invariably returned to the same theme: money and how difficult life was without my help. In April, Jennifer finally showed the real consequences of having to live without my financial support. I received a call from Justin, clearly distressed. Grandma, can I talk to you? I'm confused about some things happening at home. We arranged to meet at the McDonald's near his school. Justin had grown in recent months. He was taller and with a deeper voice, but mainly seemed more emotionally mature. Grandma, my parents are fighting a lot. Dad keeps complaining that Mom spent too much money and that now he has to pay the bills alone. Mom cries and says you abandoned them. Justin, do you know how much your parents earn per month? Not exactly, but I know it's a lot. Mom always talked about earning more than most of her friends. They earn together more than $20,000 per month. That's more than many families earn in an entire year. Justin's eyes widened. 20,000? Per month? Yes. So tell me, why do you think they're having financial difficulties? Justin was thoughtful. At 16, he already worked part-time at a sports store and understood the value of money better than his own parents. Grandma, yesterday Dad fought with Mom because she bought a $1,500 purse. He said now they need to cut expenses and that she can't spend like before. And what do you think about that? I think it's strange because I always saw Mom buying expensive things. I thought you were very rich. Justin, your mother was always supported by me. When you needed something expensive, who paid was me. Family vacations, house renovations, new cars. I always helped with everything. So Mom never had to really manage money? Exactly. And now, at 42, she's learning that she can't spend $15,000 per month when she earns $15,000 per month. Justin laughed, but it was a sad laugh. Grandma, Mom is talking about selling the BMW and buying a cheaper car. Dad wants her to look for a job that pays more, but she doesn't want to leave her current company. It was exactly what I expected to happen. Jennifer was being forced to make adult choices for the first time in her life. How do you feel about all this, Justin? Confused. Mom says you're mean and that you abandoned our family. But Dad says Mom spent your money as if it were hers and that was always wrong. And you? What do you think? Justin looked at me with a seriousness that impressed me. Grandma, remember when I was 12 and wanted a PlayStation 5? You said I had to work and save money to buy it, remember? I remember. It took me 8 months collecting money, cutting grass, and washing cars. When I finally bought it, I took care of it like it was gold. It never broke. I never dropped it, always stored it properly. And so? My friend Jake got the same PlayStation as a gift from his parents. He broke the controller in 3 months because he didn't take care of it. He didn't value it because it cost him nothing to get it. Justin paused, organizing his thoughts. I think Mom is like Jake. She never had to work to get things, so she doesn't value them. And I think you're right to make her learn. My 16-year-old grandson had understood something that my 42-year-old daughter was still struggling to accept. Justin, your parents used you to try to convince me to back down from my decision. How did you feel about that? It was strange and annoying. I felt like I was in the middle of an adult fight where I shouldn't be. And how do you feel now that you understand the situation better? I feel that Dad and Mom need to solve their own problems. And I feel that you deserve to be treated better. I hugged my grandson in that McDonald's, and for the first time in months felt I had done the right thing. If a 16-year-old child could understand basic concepts of respect and responsibility, there was no excuse for 2 adults in their 40s not understanding. Justin, you'll always be my grandson, and I'll always love you. But I won't solve problems that your parents can solve themselves anymore. Do you understand? I understand, Grandma, and you know what? I think it'll be good for them to learn to manage on their own. I left that meeting with the certainty that I was raising a responsible adult, even if I couldn't do the same with his mother. In September, 7 months after the Christmas that changed everything, Jennifer appeared at my door on a Thursday afternoon. She was different, thinner, with dark circles, simpler clothes. For the first time in years, she seemed genuinely vulnerable, not performative vulnerability. "Mom, can I come in? I need to talk to you." I let her in, but kept my guard up. In recent months, I had learned to distinguish between genuinely repentant Jennifer and Jennifer trying to manipulate me. We sat in the living room, and she looked around, noticing the changes. The watercolors on the walls, the Italian books on the coffee table, the new plants I had started growing. "The house is different," she commented. "More yours." "Thank you." Jennifer took a deep breath. "Mom, I came here to apologize. Really this time." "I'm listening." "James and I are getting divorced." The news surprised me, although it made sense. Relationships built on financial convenience rarely survive when the money runs out. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and it was true. Despite everything, I didn't want Jennifer to suffer. "No, Mom, you were right. Our marriage only worked because there was always your help to solve our problems." When the money ended, we discovered we had nothing else in common. Jennifer told me how the last months had been a brutal awakening. Without my financial support, they had to sell the BMW and buy a used Honda Civic. They canceled the expensive gym and enrolled in a neighborhood one. They stopped eating out 3 times a week. James started blaming me for everything. He said I was wasteful, irresponsible, that you had spoiled me too much. I got furious because he also took advantage of your gifts. He was the one who suggested buying the car for his mother. "And how did you deal with these differences?" "Badly. We started fighting about everything. He wanted me to look for a better job, but I like my current work. He wanted to sell the house and move to a smaller apartment. I didn't want to. Every conversation turned into an argument about money." Jennifer paused, wiping her eyes. "The last straw was when he said I needed to grow up and stop expecting Mom to solve everything. I yelled that you had abandoned me when I needed you most. He replied that I had never really needed you, just your money. And what did you answer?" "Nothing," because I realized he was right. This admission surprised me. In recent months, Jennifer had shown small signs of maturity, but this was the first time she openly acknowledged her dependence. "Mom, I need to ask you something, but it's not what you're thinking." "What is it?" "I need you not to help me financially. Not now, not when the divorce comes through." I looked at her with curiosity. This wasn't the Jennifer I knew. "Why?" "Because I'm 42 years old, and I've never learned to really live alone. Whenever I had a problem, I called you. Whenever I wanted something expensive, I knew you'd find a way. I was never forced to make difficult choices or to grow as a person." Jennifer got up and went to the window, looking at the garden I had started renovating. "You know what scared me most in recent months? When James left me, my first impulse was to call you asking for help to hire an expensive lawyer, to rent an apartment in Coral Gables, to maintain my lifestyle. But you didn't call." "No, and you know why? Because I remembered what you said, that at 42, I should be able to solve my own problems." "And did you manage?" "I'm managing. I hired a lawyer who accepts installment payments. I'm moving to a 1-bedroom apartment in Westchester. It's not glamorous, but it's what I can afford alone. I'm going to split the house with James 50-50 and use my part to start over." For the first time in months, I felt genuine pride in my daughter. "Jennifer, how are you feeling about all this?" "Scared," she admitted, "but also free. For the first time in my life, I'm going to live alone, pay my own bills, make my own decisions. It'll be difficult, but it'll also be mine." "And Justin?" "Justin will stay with me on Thursdays and weekends, with James the rest of the week." We talked to him about the situation, and he said something that marked me. "What?" "He said he was proud of me for finally learning to be an adult. Imagine, my 16-year-old son having to congratulate me for growing up." We laughed together, but it was a melancholic laugh. "Mom, I came here to apologize for Christmas, for the slippers, for all the years I treated you like a personal bank. I came to apologize for taking 42 years to value everything you did for me." "Jennifer, let me finish. I also came to ask forgiveness for trying to manipulate you, for using Justin, for mobilizing the whole family against you. You were right and I was wrong. Period." I was silent for a moment, processing this version of my daughter I had never known. "Jennifer, you hurt me a lot. Not just at Christmas, but for years. I lost myself trying to be the perfect mother who solved everything." "I know, and I'm sorry. But I feel proud of you now. For the first time in years, you're talking like a responsible adult." Jennifer started crying, but they were different tears from what I had seen in recent months. "Can I ask you a question, Mom?" "Of course." "Can you forgive me?" "Not now. I know it'll take time. But eventually." "Jennifer, I forgive you now. Because you finally understood." We hugged that afternoon, and for the first time in decades, it was a hug between two adult women, not between a mother and a dependent daughter. Today is December 2025, 1 year after that Christmas that changed our lives forever. I'm writing this story at my new desk, surrounded by plants I grew myself and watercolors I painted in recent months. Jennifer kept her word. She didn't ask me for financial help once during the year. She moved to a small but charming apartment in Westchester, decorated with thrift store furniture and plants I taught her to care for. She learned to cook. At 42, she discovered she likes making homemade pasta. The divorce came through in October. It was civilized because both had their own assets and there were no major disputes. James moved to an apartment in Aventura and started dating a coworker 2 months later. Jennifer didn't mind. She said she realized she had never truly loved James, just the security he represented. Justin is thriving. At 17, he got a partial scholarship to study engineering at Florida International University. He works part-time at a computer store and saves money to buy his first car. He has dinner with me every Thursday and tells me about his plans for the future. "Grandma," he said last week, "thank you for teaching Mom to grow up. Now she's much nicer to live with." Carmen and I completely resumed our friendship. We're part of the same walking group, book club, and we're planning a trip together to Portugal next year. At 69, I have a more active social life than when I was 40. I finished the landscaping course with the best grade in the class. Now I have a small garden design business for residences. It's not much money, but it's my work, the result of my passion and competence. The trip to Italy in October was transformative. I spent 3 weeks visiting Rome, Florence, and small towns in Tuscany. I spoke Italian with locals, painted watercolors of medieval landscapes, ate gelato every day without guilt. At 69, I lived the adventure I dreamed of my whole life. I have a boyfriend now. Henry is 71, retired from the Navy, and I met him in the Italian group. We meet twice a week for dinner and to talk about books, travel, and future plans. We don't live together. At 69, I value my independence too much to give it up. Jennifer used the year to discover herself too. She started therapy, signed up for dance classes, and made new friends. She's dating a history teacher she met at a bookstore. A simple man who earns less than her and whom she's learning to love for the person he is, not for what he can offer. "Mom," she said at our last lunch together, "thank you for forcing me to grow up. I know it hurt, but it was the best gift you ever gave me." James maintained contact only through Justin. I heard he and his new girlfriend are having financial problems because she's also a spender. Some men never learn. Rosa, my sister, apologized for trying to convince me to back down from my decision. "You were right about Jennifer," she admitted. "She needed to learn to manage on her own." Carmen, my cousin, also acknowledged she had misjudged the situation. "Family isn't an obligation to finance irresponsibility," she said at the last family gathering. Justin continues being my favorite grandson. Actually, my only grandson. He learned valuable lessons watching our family go through this transformation. At 17, he already has more emotional maturity than many 40-year-old adults. Ruth, my former mother-in-law, lost the Tesla. James couldn't keep up with the payments after the divorce and had to return the car. I heard she was furious and blamed Jennifer for the end of the family's generosity. Some people really don't deserve expensive gifts. As for me, I discovered that Patricia always existed underneath Jennifer's mother. She just needed space to breathe and grow. At 69, I have hobbies, friends, professional projects, a romantic relationship, and most importantly, self-esteem. I don't regret anything I did for Jennifer during all those years. I was a loving mother doing what I thought was best. But I also don't regret saying enough when I realized my love was being transformed into fuel for irresponsibility. The best part is that Jennifer and I now have a real relationship. We talk about books, work, relationships, dreams. She asks me for advice as an adult, not as a dependent. She invites me for dinner at her house, modest, but made with love, and cooks for me instead of expecting me to solve her life. Sometimes she still calls me when she's sad or confused, but now they're conversations between two women who support each other mutually, not a daughter transferring responsibilities to her mother. This story began with $15 slippers and an ungrateful daughter. It ends with two independent women who finally learn to love and respect each other truly. If you're reading this and recognize yourself in my story, whether as an overly giving mother or as an overly dependent child, know that it's never too late to change. Dignity has no price, and self-esteem is non-negotiable. Sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no.